field and found a way to make a living doing it. Ask questions and listen to their stories. Welcome to our guests.
What's up, man?
Hey everyone. I'm not texting in the middle of this. I'm telling my daughter who's at University of Maryland, they just found 3 more things of corona. She graduated from here. She's coming home. So saying, I'm in a meeting. There we go. Now she knows. Sorry about that.
Do you want to take it off?
Sure. Hi everyone. Thank you for coming to this. I feel like this is a pretty big turnout for one of these, so this is really nice. How many people here are interested in TV?
Me too.
And you can raise your hand more than once. How many are interested in entertainment along the digital lines? Like streaming, digital?
Yeah.
And how many people in film?
No.
Okay, thanks. I'd just like to get a general idea of like where people are at. My name's Sarah Mazes. I'm Vice President of Television for the Jim Henson Company. I oversee production and development. We are a production studio, which means that we make the shows that we sell to networks. If you have any questions, we'll be opening this up for questions. But I've actually always been passionate about television. I've always been passionate about anything that was on a screen I wanted to look at. I've been watching TV obsessively since I was old enough to sit up. And unfortunately, I never really liked to read. I didn't really like to write. And I spent a lot of time hidden in front of the TV. And the joke is on my parents because now I'm in it. So, but the joke is also on me because now I'm also a writer. So it's interesting. Things change. But I started out as an agent. I was at the William Morris Agency in New York as a literary agent, and I represented a lot of books in lifestyle and in children's publishing, and really wanted to be on the creative side. I liked agenting a lot, but the deal side was not so interesting to me. I really wanted to be creative. I wanted to be making shows. I wanted to be writing. I wanted to be doing whatever it was that people were doing that were getting those shows onto television. And actually, Jim Henson was one of my absolute heroes, and I had a goal in life that I wanted to work for him. I was set on the fact that one day I was going to work for Jim Henson. And actually, despite the fact that I'm there and I've been there for about 5 years, I interviewed there 3 times, got rejected each time. And when Jim Henson passed away, I cried my eyes out because I knew I'd never get to work for him. But now I'm there and I work with his son and his daughter. So it's definitely a lesson in perseverance. But I moved out to Los Angeles from New York about just over 20 years ago, because I was offered a job to run development for an animation studio. And it was a way in. It wasn't my dream job, but I thought this is going to be the job that gets me out to Los Angeles, that gets me working in television. And I took it, and I went from there. I worked with the people who created Ren and Stimpy, and I worked on Barbie movies and numerous other shows for kids and movies, and ended up at Amazon Studios and Henson, working part-time for both as an executive, as a temporary executive, and have been at Henson now for 5 years.
You look like you're ready.
Well, I'll go. Okay, cool. I'm Adam. I have 2 kids here. I'm not going to give their last name, but you can figure it out after looking at my name here, because they'll be embarrassed if I tell who they are. Okay, Mason Ware and City Ware. I have just a quick question, just anybody can answer this. After you graduate high school and you end up wanting to get a job in something in entertainment and media, how do you think that happens?
Practice.
Practice is one word. Practice is one word. Yeah.
Connections.
What?
Connections.
Connections. So relationships, using relationships, etc. Okay. Cool. So in my case, it was getting kicked out of college, right? And I grew up in New York City. Was interested in television in terms of like watching it, right? I was interested in sort of like watching TV shows get made. I got fortunate enough to go to a couple of them and see them get made, and that was kind of cool. And when I got to college, I didn't like the first college I went to, though I like politics, I guess, and things like that, and I was interested in studying those kind of things. And I was just sort of doing the requirements you have to do when you first go to college, all the sort of basics you have to get done. I transferred to UCLA, and that was cool. The weather was great versus back east. And so I liked being outside as opposed to being inside where the class was. And after a while, I got to the point where my grades weren't good enough, and they were like, you clearly don't want to go here, you should go somewhere else. So my first job was selling health club memberships. And the two towers back here in Century City, right? So at the time, you can go to the top, and you could, no restrictions, like there was no security guard or anything. You just take the elevator to the 40-something floor, and which I did, and I went down each floor in both towers and gave out free health club membership passes to people, on the hope that someone would come in, try it, and then I would sign them up. And I got lucky enough because I signed up a person who worked at a company selling television time, television commercials. And I signed him up to a gym membership, and he said, you know, you would be good in sales. And I was like, okay, cool, what does that mean? He's like, do you want to go into our training program at this company? And I was like, versus going up and down this building all the time looking for membership? Sure, right? And I connected at that moment. I connected with television. I was passionate about it in a way before. I became very passionate about it again, but this time in part out of fear, right? Because I was no longer in college. I didn't have a degree. I had to have a job. So there was fear to really be into this job, but it was also out of passion, right? And I ended up taking that and take it from different companies, and I got to be part of a lot of different companies that had just started. So when the Fox network first launched, I got to be part of that, right? And I was there for 6 years. After that, I worked at another company that had just launched that was sort of in the streaming space very early on. After that, I worked at another company that brought sort of new TV shows to TV, got to be part of that. And now what I do today is I'm owned by a company that owns 180 to 200 TV stations across the United States, produces local news all over the United States. We have streaming services and television networks, et cetera, and I get to try to start building streaming services. I do one that's called the Tennis Channel streaming service called Tennis Channel Plus. So if you're a tennis fan, you'll like that. And there's another one that we just launched a year ago called Stir, and it's sort of like free ad-supported streaming. The thing for me throughout the whole thing was to remain passionate throughout everything. So if I want to ask myself what I would like to everybody here to walk away with if I did anything successful today, was to someone to leave here and remember that you got to have passion. And if you don't have passion for something, then find the passion in it. And don't sort of lean back and just sort of be cool about it and just, sort of go about your day. Find passion in it. And if not, find passion in something about it. And if not, then go to a place, do something that you do have passion about. And apply that all the time going forward until the very last day where you can't work anymore, or you choose not to work anymore, et cetera. So that's me.
Okay, well, very good. My name's Andy Masner, and I'm the president and owner of a company that does a thing called System, and we do two things. One is we design and build video trucks for shooting sports and concerts and portable systems. The other is production services, so we provide all the crew and equipment to go out and shoot live events like esports, sports, concerts, and so forth. But I have a question first for you guys. How many want to be in front of the camera, actor, actress? Okay. How many want to be directors or producers? How many know the difference between a director and a producer? Good. Very few do. So I'll explain that because it's kind of critical. The producer is the guy that comes up with a project, whether it's making a TV show or a film based on a book or an original script, and he has to put the elements together, the financing, get talent assigned to it, find a director, and find distribution and financing. So he's kind of the business end of making a project. The director's job is to work with the talent, the actors and actresses. So the producer's job is to ensure that the elements of production are available for the director so he can do his job. In other words, if you're doing a shoot, you don't want the director in the middle of the day to be worrying where lunch is coming from, or some prop didn't arrive. That's the producer's job and his staff. So there's a real definition. Now, some people will function as producer and director. It's a tough road to hoe, but you can do that. So I functioned in, well, first of all, I started at the top and worked my way down. Okay? I made a movie. I read an interview with a famous director, Stanley Kubrick, and they asked him, how do you become a filmmaker? And he said, well, make a film. You know, any film. So I bought a camera at a pawn shop that didn't even have an electric motor, and got a job in a laboratory, and I made a movie, and it won a documentary, and it won a couple of awards, and that's how I started. As the years went by, I ended up directing a TV series for 4 years called America's Dumbest Criminals. It was on 237 stations in the U.S. and in 65 foreign countries. It's been off the air for more than 10 years, so most of you probably didn't see it. But
I saw.
yeah,
I saw
okay. Okay, so
I still always have it.
the show did tremendous in foreign because foreigners' view of Americans is that we're all fat and stupid, and the dumbest criminals were mostly stupid. So it really fulfilled their pre-existing perception and was a successful show and fun to do. But is there anyone here interested in doing the technical side of film or television production? All right, we got one. Because there's no shortage of directors and actors and actresses, but for us, we have, and everyone I know in the business, we have a horrible shortage of video engineers, or what's called engineer in charge, or a lot of real technical positions, even like a sound man, cameraman. So there's pretty good money. Like one thing I would encourage is anyone to think about that, because you can make a couple $100,000 a year with about 2 or 3 years experience if you become a really qualified engineer in charge. So that kind of job, so you have a production, right? A multi-camera production. Let me back up a little. So most feature films and most commercials are shot with a single camera, okay? And they change angles and do a lot of takes and you edit it together. But live television, like sports or a concert or the Emmys or Oscars, you have to have multiple cameras. Anybody got an idea how many cameras are used in, say, a typical football game? How many?
Like 70.
7?
70.
7.
7-0.
That better be a pretty big game. I think it's kind of around 12.
12?
Yeah.
I see like a bunch of cameras.
Yeah, it could be more. NFL games are bigger, going to be bigger. A smaller college, maybe only 7 or 8.
You're also seeing the individual, lots of different places are filming it for different reasons.
Yeah.
So those are the cameras you're seeing. He's talking about for the specific, for one network, the network that owns the rights to show it, like the master license for it.
So when you're shooting a live production with anywhere from 4 to 15 cameras, and somebody has to be in charge technically, because otherwise things get out of control quickly. So that's a really good job. So like I said, I started out, I just made a movie, and then I made another one, and little documentaries and a couple of feature films. When I graduated from UCLA in economics, I thought people that were in television and film were weirdos, but here I am, proving that they are weirdos. But is there any questions? No questions. Okay.
But how long did it take you to learn how to film or film and stuff?
So I do believe film school is really good. I mean, you're here where we have USC and UCLA, and so you get two things. You learn some of the technical elements. So there's the creative and the technical.
But how did you bought your camera at a pawn shop, right?
Right.
So how did you know how to make a documentary?
Oh,
What was the process of making a documentary?
well, so I really didn't study film. I did have some film writing in college, but I read some books, and then I got a job, the worst job in Hollywood, which doesn't exist anymore. We used to shoot on film, now it's all digital. And I had the worst job, which is mixing the chemicals and developing the film and then printing the film in a laboratory so I could shoot with my camera and develop it for free. So I went out on the border of Venice and Santa Monica. There used to be a pier. There's still the Santa Monica Pier, but there used to be a second one further south. And it was kind of burned out, and it was filled with Skid Row alcoholics. I mean, really down and out people. And so I just went out and started interviewing all these winos and drunks. And then I would process the film during the week, and I had in my bedroom 2 rewinds and a viewer, and I just started working this film. And I found most of the Skid Row winos have similar stories. Well, I don't know if they're truthful stories, but they all said they started drinking in the war. At that era, it was Korean War and World War II that turned them into alcoholics. And I think it's still a problem with veterans, our current wars. And the other is that their wife left them for a better man. This was a common theme. But actually, their wife left them because they were winos or alcoholics. So I just started doing this story, and I found one that was pretty interesting and followed them around on and off for 6 months.
So how long did it take you to shoot it? And then how long did it take you to edit it?
So I would shoot on the weekends over about a 6-month period, and then my main character disappeared. And so I was only half done with the film. And then 5 months later, he reappeared on the beach, and I started shooting him again and finished the shooting. The editing process was a long process because I didn't know what I was doing, and you know, I just shot in a kind of unstructured way. But I learned one of the biggest lessons in my whole life. If you ever become a filmmaker, don't listen to anybody except possibly the editor you're working with when you get into post-production. So I had started cutting this film together, and I knew a guy that was a real legitimate film editor, and I asked him to look at it. You have what's called a rough cut, which is you've cut it together, but you haven't put in the music and sound effects, right? Haven't mixed it down. So this professional editor looks at my rough cut and he goes, "Oh man, I wouldn't waste my time. You shouldn't even finish this. It's useless." So then I went another 6 months without doing anything. But I'm the kind of person I can't stand to not finish something I start. So I went back and finished this film. Well, back in the day, long before you were born, you would go to a movie. Usually they had 2 movies they played, and in the middle they played short films. You're too young for that even to remember when they had shorts in
Okay,
movie
we'll go with
theaters.
that.
Okay. And so they played my short in the Lincoln Theater in Venice, which had seated 1,200 people. It was a packed night. First time I screened it in front of an audience. And that editor was there too. And it got a lot of applause and was actually a standing ovation. And then the editor came over to me and goes, "That was really great." And I go, "You told me not even to finish it, that it was a piece of junk." He goes, "Yeah, but I didn't understand how it was going to be with all the effects and the music." And so I learned a really important life. Don't listen to anyone. Only the director, you have your vision. And also you could listen to your editor because he's right in there with you, cutting it. So,
So you have 3 different types of career path. I mean, we've all done a little bit of different things.
right.
For me, it's the business side of it, right? Figuring out how much one should spend, what's the idea of the business, how much one should spend against it, how long should you spend against it before you decide it's not working, or before you decide you want to put more money against it, and how do you make money on it, and then how do you grow it, right? And then you have filmmaking and actually a thing that I'm quite familiar with, which is mobile sports production. So I think there's about 12 to 15 cameras at a football game, If you count the one that's over the top, I think maybe there's 7 at the Super Bowl, if you're generous, where the wires are connecting, you know, and they put the camera over the top and that sort of technology. And then you have someone who is in the job of finding good ideas, finding creative people, believing in them, developing the story they have.
Interrupt 1 second, because what you're saying. The hardest thing to find in Hollywood is a good idea. Guaranteed, that's the hardest thing.
And to nurture it, and to help it along, and to help finance it, and then help actually have it get sold to somebody else who will pay you more than what you financed it for, and so on. So you have 3 really interesting sort of parts of this. You actually were in front of the camera for a period, right?
I was on, it was stand-up comedy. I don't like to
Front of
think
an
myself in
audience,
front of the camera, but yeah.
So, any questions relating to our sort of 3 sort of different fields, or any other questions whatsoever about TV, theater, media? Well, theater, I don't think we talked about, but theater.
I know nothing about the theater. Ask me nothing about it.
I don't know if I asked this before. If anybody works at KBEV now? Good, because you're on the camera, so that's a good thing. Anybody else work
Perfect.
at KBEV? So the idea that a high school has a TV station, that has a studio, and has editing equipment, and has master control somewhere in here, which is another version of the editing equipment, sort of, delivery, actually has 4 cameras on a football game, and someone's directing it. Go camera 1, 2, 3, or 4, which is on the play-by-play people. The fact that there's graphics that come through, the fact that this TV station is distributed on a cable system, not just any cable system, but Spectrum on Channel 6, not just in Beverly Hills, but into West Hollywood, into other parts where Spectrum goes in there. That's pretty freaking cool, right? And so, depending on where you are right now and what you're doing here, I know for my daughter, she loves being connected to the theater, every part of it. Whether she decides to stay in theater when she gets out of high school or not, it's a different issue, but she's learned so much being involved in the theater, literally being on stage, behind the scenes, costumes, whatever. So if you have any interest in anything that has to do with a camera, or anything that has to do with production, or anything that has to do with distributing video out to somebody, see and try to spend some time at KBEV.
You know what, continuing on that comment, so filmmaking or TV making is a craft, and it's not unlike making chairs. So if you decided you're going to become a classic custom furniture manufacturer, the first chair you make probably isn't going to, like, the glue won't be good, a wobbly leg, maybe when you put the stain, the walnut stain, it drips. And then you make another chair and it's a little better. And then you make another chair. And by the time you made 10 or 20 chairs, they're starting to be pretty good chairs. Filmmaking's the same way. You don't just like wake up and become a great filmmaker. You have to make a movie that probably sucks. And then another one that sucks a little less, and another, until you get to the point where you understand what you need to do in order to make a good film, whether it's writing, directing, acting, any element.
So let's say you're like an actor and you're a little older now. How would you make the transition to like producing, like Brad Pitt in like The Departed, or Bradley Cooper produced The Joker? You know, like how would you try to make that transition to producing?
I'll take this one.
You should absolutely.
I will absolutely take this one. Are you saying, okay, I'm an actor like Bradley Cooper, and so I want to turn to a producer, or like,
I'm not saying that. I'm saying like when you're
I'm
older-
ready. I'm ready to make the change. Ready to
and
make the leap.
yeah, well, you know, you want to do all of it. How would you like try to convince people that you're suited to produce something?
Well, the best thing you can do, and these jobs are available. People are always looking for them. Is to find a job as an assistant at a production company.
What does a producer do?
What a producer does, literally, you are producing something. The true word, you're bringing it forth, and you are creating it and building it. A producer is in charge of shepherd. The thing is there's lots of different kinds of producers. Let me put a pin in that, and I'll get to that second. I'll first address, if you're looking, regardless of whether or not you're an actor or you haven't acted before, the best job you can possibly get if you're looking to make a leap to production is to get a job in a production company. Either get a job as an intern. By the fact that you're in high school should not preclude you from the fact that you could probably even hit someone up, find somebody with a parent in production who will let you follow them around for a day, and then you can parlay that one day to like, I followed this person around for a day, show interest, and then use that to like try and get in the door somewhere as an assistant. The other best thing you can do as you are continuing on your path, when you go to college, make sure you do take classes that improve your writing. One of the most important skills, which I learned, I wish I had understood this as a young person who hated writing. There is no skill more important for a producer to know than story and writing. And you will start as an assistant. You're going to be asked to do things like write coverage. Coverage is when somebody sends in a script or a book, and they're like, and the executives are like, we're considering doing this. And then we hand it off to an intern or an assistant and say, can you do coverage? Their job is to read the book and write a book report. That's what they do. And this happens all the time in Hollywood. The executives sometimes don't even actually read the book. All they're reading is the coverage. So whether or not somebody can write good coverage is a difference between getting a job and not getting a job. So at this particular stage, hone your writing skills and find summer internships working in a production office. I mean, my daughter is interested in production, so when she comes home from college, she comes to the studio and sometimes helps out on the lot, and it's just getting your foot in the door is the number one thing.
So,
I was just going to address the other production thing there are many different levels of production. If you're saying a producer, typical producer is the person who is in charge of sort of shepherding the project. Executive producer is the person whose creative stamp is the umbrella over it. So sometimes you'll see Steven Spielberg executive produces something. That means he sees the material and approves it. The producer is the one who's there hiring the writers, working with the writers, trying to figure out what the voice is. For me, my job in production is to hire the producers, the line producers. Those are the peoples who do all the stuff that actually bring forth, like hire all the staff, get the staff up the entire production, all of that. But my job is the creative vision, and I am sort of the compass of the production, making sure that the show continues to go in the creative direction that we have all agreed it's going to go in, and keeping it focused. And the people that I would hire to follow me are ones who can write really well and are really passionate and understand story.
So Brad Pitt or Cooper, so they have a pretty long history of appearing in films, right? And during those dozens of films, I'm sure they're quite observant of the process of making films. And because they're stars, producers want to work with them, right? And distributors want to distribute their films. So they have a little bit of juice in that a deal. Look, this is sort of hypothetical, but somebody might go to Brad Pitt and say, I want you to do this film. And then Brad Pitt now could say, well, yeah, I'll do it, but only if you'll put up the money to do this other film that I found a script I liked. And because he has enough experience in the business, observing the process, knowing who's a good cameraman, who's a good sound man, et cetera, how you promote a film, so he can make that transition. By the way, it's a transition that essentially couldn't be done 20, 30 years ago. Actors were actors, producers were producers. Nobody would accept an actor making that transition, but now it's quite common.
There's also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Done.
I was going to say there's a difference between, a Brad Pitt who has, at this point, he actually functions, he doesn't function as a producer. He is a producer, but a lot of actors have companies and they start their own production companies. And what they essentially are is they're organizations where it's for the actor. It's to find material for that particular actor. and then they partner with the studio, and the studio gives them a line producer who does all the hard work. So they don't actually have to be the person like hiring stuff. They're just on as a producer because they're shepherding the creative vision. So, like, for example, oh my God, this was one of my my first introductions to this. When I was at William Morris, we sat in a meeting with George Clooney and this was, over 20 years ago. And I remember them sitting there like, George is looking for something where he can wear a uniform. He looks really good in a uniform. And it was such an introduction into Hollywood and understanding what goes on with the production companies and what stars like that are actually looking for. I think Bradley Cooper and Brad Pitt are both really great examples of actors who clearly show creative chops, doing so much more than being in front of the camera.
Any more questions? Anybody want to hear what I had for breakfast?
Yes.
Nothing. Didn't have a chance.
I had half a muffin.
All right.
Which was delicious. The culinary students are fantastic.
I heard you were talking about internships. Do you know of any like specific opportunities that we have that like for like a summer internship or something?
Opportunities that Beverly has?
No,
You mean
like
for?
you guys specifically.
Does
Oh,
Hudson have
yes,
any-
we do. We do hire interns. We happen to hire people who are in college at this point because we're really focused on developing talent and making sure that we are bringing in people who can at every step move forward and forward and forward and forward. So we're taking people at the college level and we're taking things now. But that said, I mean, it's hard when you're in high school because you don't have the hours in the afternoon to do stuff. But that said, there's always the possibility of following somebody around during production if it's like over a spring break or something like that, which is what my older daughter did. When over Christmas, she has like 6 weeks off and she would just, follow us around. So,
We.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I have like a separate question. Oh, should I just bring that up now? Okay, sorry.
To me or her?
For like all of you guys.
Okay.
So basically, like I've been in like I don't know. I'm like a movie nut, so I my brain's like always like focused on that, like not really school necessarily, but so I'm always like writing like new pieces of like not like I don't know like scripts.
that's great.
necessarily,
Don't
but-
be shy about that. That is totally common.
And I just don't know like how because I do want to like try and get them on their like feet in a way.
Right.
But I'm not like a part of KBEV or anything. I don't know how to like.
Well,
make
first
that
of all, if
happen.
you're,
Can you repeat the question? I couldn't quite hear it.
she writes and she's
Okay.
like writing bits and pieces and I think if I'm hearing you right, you're saying, how do I like see that? What do I do with it? How do I do something with it? Nobody has more tools right now than you guys. I mean, YouTube is extraordinary. We did not have those opportunities for building ourselves up on YouTube. I did a video, oh my God, I did a video on, oh my God, this totally ages me. But YouTube was not quite as big as it is right now. This must have been like 15 years ago. And I posted because it was sort of at this weird cusp where influencing was becoming big. And the reason I bring up influencing is what you're looking to do is you're looking to put something out there, content out there, find eyeballs for it, get a little confirmation on it, learn how to hone it, all of that. YouTube is an amazing way to do that. I was talking upstairs about writing because I've written, I think I mentioned this before, I used to write for Fashion Police and I've written for the Today Show and I write children's books and I write humor books, and one of the ways that I used to sort of get myself seen more was I posted a very early video of me doing comedy. It was like one of my first stand-up shows, like ever. And not shows, it was my first set. The show makes it sound like it's a one-woman show. It was so not a one-woman show. But, and it went viral, like at a very early stage, like 150,000 views overnight, which was like a really weird thing back then, because that stuff did not happen. It was very weird. But using that, you then can, okay, here's this video, this did really well. And then I go to somebody who I'm interested in writing for, and I'm like, and I had this video which did really well. And they're like, you must be special. We're going to hire you to do this. And then you use that to be like, well, now I've done this and I've done this video. So you have these pieces, you have little videos, things you've written. The best thing I could suggest is produce little shorts and put them on YouTube. Create your own channel. Play around with it. I mean, it's like a blog. It's like, I don't know how either of you feel about this, but it's this amazing platform where you can play around with things that you're writing and see them come to fruition. You know, you have a high school stacked with people, lots of people who are actors and want to be doing stuff, and it's good for them too.
How many of you have iPhones 11s? How many know people?
If you have an iPhone, you can shoot it.
How many people know people that have iPhone 11s? Somebody, right, in some form. So that Lady Gaga music video that just came out, right? It was shot on an iPhone 11.
It's so great.
Right, and there's commercials for it, but just go online and look it up. That whole video, music video, is like, I don't know, 3.5 minutes long. All of it was shot on an iPhone 11, and it was edited on some complicated editing software, but everyone who has a Mac has this software built into it already. So, has a version of it built into it already. So the ability to take what you write and then decide that you want to turn that into video, and if what you're writing is has dialogue in it, right? So therefore you're going to want people to act it, right? Well, you're the one who wrote it. You're the one who knows how it should look and feel. You know what wants to come out. The ability to take your phone, right, and just start shooting it in little segments, and then actually just start editing it on your own computer before you put it anywhere. Just start taking it from the written word and actually now start turning it into a visual piece. You'll actually start to find yourself getting really good at figuring out how to now take what was in here that you wrote to then actually make visual before you decide to go let anybody see it.
And you don't even need to plan on showing it to anybody. You can just plan on doing it. Just play with it. Take one little step every day. It's all done in tiny little micro steps. Did you see the snowball one?
No.
The snowball ad?
No.
Oh my God! They had the guy who did. Oh God, he's a huge action film guy, a huge director. He shot an entire commercial called Snowball Fight on the iPhone,
Yeah.
and it was gorgeous.
Yeah.
It was really gorgeous. But that's the best thing you can do. Play around with it.
I also have like another question. How do you so you know like Quentin Tarantino, he usually directs and writes his stuff. So I also I'm very controlling like with what I write, and I always
You have to let go of that.
I know. Like, how do you get to that point?
When you're Quentin Tarantino,
Yeah,
you can get to
exactly.
that
That's
point.
what I thought. Sorry.
Yeah. Until then, you have to be very collaborative and open. It's okay to feel confident. It's okay to have a vision and believe in your vision and have creative debates with people about your vision. Work with people you respect and you know that will come. But you want to write and direct, start doing it with your own YouTube stuff. But,
I think we're done.
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
everybody. Thank you for taking the bull bite.
I've been having projects canceled. You know, we do huge amounts.